Hi, Sergeant Paula Keller here with the New Britain Police Department's Animal Control Division. Welcome to another episode of Animal 411. So this here is Maggie. She's a 5 to 7-year-old female American Bulldog mix that came into our facility a couple months ago. She was actually relinquished to us, was not in an environment where she could actually stay. She's a little bit shy at first, but once you get to know her, she's a really sweet girl. She prefers to be the only dog in the home, so that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to adopt. But as you can see, she's very, very sweet. She loves to cuddle. She doesn't bark much. I think she would be great in a home with older adults that just want a couch potato. Right, Maggie? You're a good girl. Okay, so for this episode of Animal 411, we're going to be talking about the training of the animal control officers. How do we train animal control officers and what's involved with their training? How do they get to know how to do their job? Interestingly enough, I teamed up with the Department of Agriculture about 3 years ago, and we now have our own animal control officers training that we do. It's a yearly training that we do, and we get about 30 students per class, and these are all animal control officers with the state of Connecticut. So they come in and we do a 96-hour course over a 6-week period of time, teaching them the various laws regarding animal control. There are a lot of laws, rules, and regulations when it comes to animal control. There's a lot of things that they need to learn, and we squeeze a lot of learning into a very short period of time. So aside from what we've already seen by watching Animal 411 as far as kennel maintenance and taking the dogs in and the regulations that are required with that, with putting the ad in the paper and all that sort of stuff, there's also the laws. They need to know the laws regarding animal care. Some of the common laws that we all know about is, number one, the animals have to be vaccinated against rabies. So the animal control officers can go out and they can address these complaints and they can give out the state infractions if necessary. Also, if you own a dog in the state of Connecticut, it has to be licensed within the city or municipality in which you reside. So that's another infraction that these animal control officers can be handing out. There's also nuisance complaints if your dog barks excessively or gets out constantly or is creating a nuisance or is vicious. These are things that animal control can also address. So how are they trained in how to address these complaints? How are they trained in handing out the tickets and in the law, state laws, and laws in their own municipalities, which would be city ordinances? What's involved with that? Well, there's quite a bit involved. There's also laws in regards to dog bites. When a dog bites a person, we have quarantine laws that are mandatory, and there's state dog bite forms to fill out. So as you can see, as I keep talking, there's a lot of information that we have to give them. So fortunately enough, we are in the midst of running an Animal Control Officers Academy, and I'm able to take this camera in and do some interviews and talk one-on-one with a couple of students that are in the academy, as well as Ray Connors, who is the supervisor for the Animal Control Division for the state of Connecticut, Department of Agriculture. And he can talk a little bit about what the state's role is when it comes to animal control and how the state operates within the Department of Agriculture in regards to animal control. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and me and Maggie will see you at the end of the episode. Thank you. Right, Maggie? Good girl. So I'm here with Ray Connors. He is the supervisor for the Animal Control Division for the State Department of Agriculture. So Ray, why don't you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do as far as state animal control officers go?
Our state animal control unit is part of the Bureau of Regulatory Services with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. I have 6 state animal control officers, and what we do is we regulate and inspect all the animal facilities within the state, and that would include things like pet shops, commercial boarding kennels, dog grooming facilities, dog training facilities, and of course municipal dog pounds.
Wow, that's a lot for 6 animal control officers. And in addition to that, do they also take complaints of cruelty and investigate cruelty cases as well?
Yeah, we have the animal cruelty. We do a lot of large animal cruelty, especially involving horses. We have a facility in Niantic that we house these animals at, and of course we have to oversee that too. The other thing we do too is we work closely with the Department of Children and Families with cross-reporting of animal abuse. Gets reported to DCF, and of course if they come across any animal abuse things, that gets reported right back to our department to investigate.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because there has been, it's been shown that there is a strong link between animal abuse, child abuse, and also domestic violence. So yeah, that came into play I think 2 years ago, the mandatory cross-reporting.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3 years ago, and right. The numbers have increased. I mean, they have shown that almost 68% of the cases that get reported to DCF turn out to be something that they in turn either already had on on their radar or they opened up a new investigation.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a good thing to keep in mind. So when it comes to the municipal animal control officers, does the state oversee the municipal animal control officers as well?
We act in an advisory capacity, and just to, if they get stuck on something or they need assistance with a statute that they don't really understand what's going on with a certain law, we will help them in that respect.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the training. Ray and I collaborated about 3 years ago on doing the Animal Control Officers Academy for the state of Connecticut. So what was going on prior to us putting this class on? What was going on?
Well, prior to 2012, there was absolutely no training for animal control officers. They were not required to go through any type of training to be an animal control officer, which was scary. They're officers of the court. They're able to write tickets, make arrests, write summonses. They have to do arrest warrants, search warrants, and there was no training available for them to do that. And it was a huge liability to the municipalities. So in 2012, we put a law into effect that would require a minimum of 80 hours of initial training and then a minimum of 6 hours of continuing education. So with that, we worked with a national organization for a few years, but it didn't quite pan out because their curriculum was not really geared for animal control officers within the state of Connecticut. And that's when you and I collaborated and got this academy going.
Right, and I think we've had a lot of positive feedback on this academy, and we go beyond the 80 hours. We've added an additional 16 hours to cover some of the things that they were missing. And I think one of the best things that we did with this academy was the scenarios. At the end of the training, we give them a scenarios day. So we try to do some real life training, and that's similar to what we do with police officers, where we give them real life scenarios before putting them out onto the streets. So what are some of the things that you see that may be problematic right now going on as far as animal control?
I think, again, it's the budgets are small for animal control officers, especially their training budgets. And training is the most important thing. I mean, there's so many things that come up for training. There's a big thing in Branford on bite stick training and pepper spray training that's available to animal control officers. I just posted a thing on dealing with aggressive dogs that's coming up in Manchester, New Hampshire next month. But it costs money. Animal control officers, to go to that training, they need to increase their training budgets.
Right, so that would be a huge help to get more money towards animal control for training, and not just training, but also for staffing. I know a lot of them are understaffed, overworked. So in addition to collaborating on the Animal Control Officers Academy for the state of Connecticut, Ray and I are also on a legislative state task force for the humane treatment of animals in municipal facilities. So one of the reasons why I think it's important to have my voice on this task force is because I see, having been in animal control now for 3 years, that we do have a lot of holes in the state animal cruelty law that could be changed to make our jobs a little bit easier, to address some of the issues that we're having. I don't know when was the last time the animal cruelty statute was updated?
I think it was in 1929 was
Yeah.
the last time. And the law is antiquated. I mean, there's laws in there that still refer to, like when a farmer had a mule to pull a plow, that, to overwork an animal. I mean, it should remain in there, but the fact is that's where the law was geared to back then. So prior to even tractors being out in the fields. That's how old that law is.
Right. So, and we have a lot of issues with domestic animals now, and I think there's ways that we can maybe change the state law on animal cruelty so we can start addressing some more of these issues that we're having. And one of the other things, Ray, that I would like to see changed is maybe some of the language on the kennel licensing, maybe not just allowing people to get a kennel license, but requiring an inspection prior to that licensing. And what would you think about maybe having municipal officers available maybe to do some of these inspections for these kennel licensing?
Well, it would take a huge burden off us because currently only state animal control officers could do that. And the municipal animal control officers, nobody knows their town better than they do. And they would be the ones that would actually benefit more to go into these facilities and make sure that they're complying with what they need to.
Yeah, and I think it's the importance of having these kennels inspected and make sure that the animals are being treated well when they're being bred, and to make sure that we're trying to control overbreeding, because overbreeding does contribute to a lot of the problems that we're having in the municipal facilities as far as all these animals getting dumped off. How many animals through the state, I don't know if you can give me this number, on a yearly basis, how many stray roaming animals does the state of Connecticut collectively take in yearly?
Yeah, I don't have that data with me right now.
Would you say it's in the thousands?
Oh, at least. Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so would you say that there's an overpopulation problem?
In the pounds, yes. And what you have to remember, too, is that we got 20,000 animals being imported into the state every year, too, through rescue groups. So that takes away from animals in municipal pounds that have a chance to be adopted.
Right. No, I've heard about that. Yeah, and I just know from my experience, you know, being in a rural city here in New Britain, we're similar to Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven. We tend to get a lot of the same types of dogs, and unfortunately, we get those bully breeds in. They tend to have a bad name, and you know, we get some really good dogs in, but unfortunately, if you're importing some nice fluffy dogs from down south, Labradors and hounds, our dogs are going to end up sitting a little bit more prior to getting adopted. So what do you hope to accomplish yourself for the state task force, being on the state task force?
I'd like to get some laws updated that should be updated. Also like to see an animal abuse registry put into effect. There's other states in the nation that have it, and there's no reason why Connecticut can't have it.
That's a really good idea, and that would help out tremendously, especially when it comes to people coming to municipal facilities to adopt some of these dogs. If we had a list to go by, and we could check it and make sure that we're not adopting to people who should not be having pets.
Right.
So, all right, Ray. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are in the process of teaching right here. Our class is watching us as we're filming here, so we have to get back to teaching. But thank you for taking the time to interview with me.
Thank you.
I'm here with Sergeant Eric Pimer with the West Haven Police Department. So, Eric, how long have you been with West Haven?
I've been with West Haven 23 years.
Wow, 23 years. And you just recently became the supervisor for animal control.
It's actually 3 years today.
3 years, so you had about just as much supervisory time in animal control as I have. Wow. So how did you get into that supervisory position?
The last sergeant before me was injured and they needed somebody to go there, so they asked me to go there.
Okay. So has West Haven always had a police officer in charge of animal control there, or a sergeant in charge?
They have. They've had a sergeant for about the last 10 years in charge. Prior to that, they had a civilian in charge.
Okay. So tell me, first going into animal control, did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into?
I had no idea whatsoever. You know, I owned a dog. That was about it. And in my 20 years prior, I don't think I even went to the animal shelter.
Wow. Okay. So interesting. All right. So 20 years at the police department and never at the animal shelter. But that's not uncommon. We have officers here that have probably not been to our animal control facility for a very long time. And I think it's common in municipalities that have bigger police departments and also have animal control where there's civilians working, that the police officers basically have no idea what the animal control officers do. Is that the same with yours?
Absolutely. That's the way it used to be until I got there 3 years ago. And I've implemented some items to help things get better with the police officers. Like they have leashes in the cars now. We've trained them on how to get a dog safely, or if they're not, you know, don't get the dog if they can't, obviously, and call us in. So.
Okay. And how many animal control officers do you have working for you?
I actually have 4 full-time animal control officers, which is a great staffing.
Wow, that is great staffing. I'm jealous. Okay, so about how many animals do you take in? And do you take in cats as well?
We do. You know, as you know, as far as the state goes, it starts July 1st. Since July 1st to this point, we've taken in 110 animals.
Wow, that's 110 animals. Now, would you say most of those were stray, or do you take relinquishments in? You know, people surrendering their pets, do you take those in as well?
Most of our are strays, and this time of year with the kitten season, we're getting crushed with kittens. So if you need one, come see us.
All right, West Haven's got kittens, people. Okay, so now that you're a little bit more experienced with animal control and you are attending our Animal Control Officers Training Academy here, what are some of the things that surprised you most about animal control?
I think the thing that surprised me most is how much time it takes to do the job they do. There is so much to be done, you know, with each individual animal, even if it's just running it back and forth to the vet. I have to have somebody in the building, somebody else run them to the vet. I don't want somebody showing up to the door and there's nobody there. So there's a lot of time involved.
Right, and we get that a lot because it seems like animal control officers almost have this divided duty where part of it has to do with the animals and the adoptions and the care of the animals, and the other part of it has to do with the enforcement of the laws. So do you find that sometimes caring for the animals sometimes maybe contributes to not having enough time for the enforcement part of it, or do you think you have enough staff?
I have a lot of staff, but caring for the animals comes first. And I hate to say it, public safety is actually secondary. I wish it was first. I just got a call last week from a councilman, wants us down the beach more because we have dogs all over the beach. And I just do not have the people to put down there.
Yeah. So that could be problematic when you have issues within a town or municipality and you just don't have the staffing for it. Now, are your police officers, so when your animal control officer is not available, your police officers then have to step in if there's a stray dog or a public safety issue with an animal?
Yes, they'll step in until one of my animal control officers can come in because they're on call 24 hours a day. So.
Yeah, because the animal calls don't stop just because the animal control officer goes home. We all know that. So what are some of the things that you think might be roadblocks as far as animal control officers being able to do their job efficiently?
I think this training is helping us. You know, 2 of my 4 animal control officers have been in this training, so that's definitely helping get through the roadblocks. But we have animal control officers that have been around a long time, and it's hard to get them to change and go with the times, but we're getting there.
Now, as far as enforcement, are your police officers, do they enforce laws at all? Like, say, if they pick up a dog or there's a dog bite incident and they can check for a rabies vaccine or anything like that, do they address those issues, or is everything just kind of forwarded off to animal control?
Yeah, everything's forwarded to animal control. The police officers don't enforce anything in our town. All the reports get forwarded to us, and even if we have to follow up the next day or, next couple days, we'll follow up on all the calls.
So it seems to be a similar pattern with the municipalities, that the animal control officers get everything forwarded to them. Just in your opinion, do you think if patrol officers were to start maybe issuing tickets, it would alleviate some of the duties and maybe start making a difference in the people that own the animals being a little bit more responsible?
I think it would be helpful to have a police officer at the door talking to you about your animal than just an animal control officer. I mean, all my animal control officers are great, but are they taken as seriously as they should be sometimes? I don't think so.
Interesting. So again, this is Sergeant Eric Pimer with the West Haven Police Department's Animal Control Division, and they have kittens. And do you have a website where people can go and look at your adoptable animals?
You're better off on our Facebook page, on West Haven Police Department Facebook page, and we have a West Haven Animal Shelter Facebook page, which all of our animals get posted on immediately.
Okay, so that's the West Haven Animal
Shelter.
Animal Shelter, and it's a Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay, so if you're in the West Haven area and you are looking to adopt from a facility, check out West Haven. All right, thank you very much, Sergeant
You're
Pimer.
welcome. Thank you.
So we've interviewed a couple of supervisors, one from the state and one from West Haven. So now I want to talk to an actual animal control officer who's out working in the field. So now we have an animal control officer, Deborah Gath, who works for Torrington. So how many towns do you cover I know you work for Torrington, but do you cover other towns?
Yes, we cover Torrington, Litchfield, Banham, Goshen, and Northfield.
Wow, that's a huge territory. So how many animal control officers do you have working with you?
We have 2 full-time, 1 part-time, and 2 per diem.
Wow, okay. Do you guys have your own kennel?
Yes, we have a 14 kennel run. Not all of them are working, unfortunately.
That's common.
And we have 2 trucks, and that's pretty much it.
Now, does your facility take in cats?
Sick or injured cats we'll take in.
Okay. Do you have?
We try not to because we only have 6 cages. So.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, how many cages, because I know it's common for a lot of the municipalities to not have cages specific for cats. I know here in New Britain we don't, and it can become problematic. So what's your daily routine? Now, are your animal control officers in charge of cleaning the kennels as well as taking calls, or do you have kennel workers?
We have a kennel worker, and if she takes a day off or sick, then we cover for her. She comes in the morning, same time as us. She cleans. We do our calls. We do our walkthroughs. We check our log sheets to make sure whatever went on last night, because we're open Monday through Sunday, daytime and nighttime, 7 to 10 during the week, and 8 to 4 Saturday and Sunday.
Wow, that's a lot of coverage. So what are some of the most common complaints? I know Torrington's actually turning into quite a city. It used to be a little bit more rural, but I know you have a lot of residents there now. So maybe what are some of the common complaints that you see maybe in Torrington that you're not getting in Bantam? How are the calls different between more of your more populated area and your more suburban areas?
We're actually, we get more chicken calls and duck calls in town rather than on the larger area surrounding towns, which you would think would have chickens. A lot of roaming dogs, barking dogs, but it's a different environment, different people coming in, so we have different cultures, and we have to learn their cultures because what they think is normal might not be normal to us, what we're used to. So we're learning.
That's very important because part of the training that I'm going to give today, as I said before, we are doing the Animal Control Officers Academy now. Part of the training is going to be some cultural diversity training. So that is very important. I'm glad you brought that up because we have that here in New Britain. Different cultures view different animals in different ways. And sometimes it's more education than enforcement when it comes to caring for pets. Let's talk a little bit about feral cats. I had a side conversation with you about feral cats. So how bad is the feral cat problem in Torrington?
Bad, very bad. We have one area that's extremely bad. There's a lot of, probably at least I would say almost 2,000 cats, and they're FIV positive, most of them that we get from there, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're trying to educate the public on spade and neutering, but it doesn't work that way.
And I think educating the public first and foremost on owning a cat, cats can live 18 to 20 years. So when you take that cat into your home, just make sure that you're making that lifetime commitment. The reason why we have so many feral cat colonies is because people think cats are disposable and they can just throw them out and they'll survive in the streets, which is not entirely true. As we know, feral cats don't have a long lifespan, but the lifespan that they have is very hard and very difficult. And they can be a nuisance. So do you get more calls from people wanting to care for these cats, or do you get more calls for people that are complaining that the cats are a nuisance?
Definitely more that it's a nuisance. They want us to get the cats out of their yard. They don't want them in the yard. They're tearing up their garbage. They're on their porch. They're spraying.
Yeah, and that's a common problem. And it's not just specific to Torrington or New Britain or Connecticut. This is a nationwide problem that we're having with feral cats. So, in one of my upcoming shows, I plan on trying to address that, maybe coming up with some ideas about feral cats. So how long have you been an animal control officer with Torrington?
It's going on 7 years, but I was there 22, 23 years ago for 2 years. And it's a lot different than it was back then.
So how are you finding the training? Is this your first time through this particular class?
I went to one 2 years ago, the second part of the TAC, I think it was. But it's very informative, and you always walk away learning something. Even if you think you know everything, you always walk away learning something new.
Yeah, I think that's important for everybody. I learn constantly. As a police officer, we have in-house training quarterly. Our training never stops, and it shouldn't stop. Everybody should continue their training. Laws change, environments change, animals change, so we need to keep up with the times, and we need to have our training keeping up with everything else that's going on. So is there anything in this training that you felt was particularly important to you, or that struck you as something that you didn't know before that you're glad you know now, or something that we're missing? You're not through the training yet, but...
Well, rabies is always a good topic because it's always confusion. You might think that you know it, and then you have a case and you're stumped. You're out there going, okay. Because there's always like not a gray area. It's either, I don't even know how to explain it, but rabies is always the questionable subject.
And when you're talking about rabies, are you talking specifically about the quarantine?
Yes.
So the quarantine aspect of rabies, for those of you that don't know, when a domestic animal bites a human, there's a mandatory quarantine, and depending on where that bite occurred, the quarantine is either on property or off property. In general, if an animal roams off of its property and bites a human, that quarantine is going to be off property. The exception to that, as I was just speaking with Ray Connors, would be if the animal bit somebody while at a veterinary visit or even at a groomer's, because it is still considered under the care of the owner. So those are two instances where the animal could just be quarantined at home. But other than that, any other time that an animal bites somebody off property, it's an off-property quarantine. And if an animal bites somebody on their property, say, common for the mailman or a delivery man, then the quarantine happens on the property. But I agree with you in reading through the laws, and it's quite a lengthy statute as far as the quarantine is considered. It can be quite cumbersome to get through and to try to understand the laws regarding the rabies quarantine. So is there anything else that you've learned from the class?
Oh boy, you put me on the spot now.
Because we've done a lot. I mean, you've visited the facility. We've gone over some of the paperwork with adoptions and, the state laws. We've gone over, I don't think you've done blood sports yet, so that's next week. So, but up to this point, why don't you give us a scale of 1 to 10 how the training is? Putting you on the spot.
10 plus.
I did not pay her to say that. 10 plus. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Deborah. That was a great interview. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Animal 411, and we'll hope you join us again next time. If you're interested in Maggie or any of our other adoptable dogs, you can always come to our Facebook page, which is New Britain Police for Pups. We also have a link to our Pet Finder site on New Britain Police for Pups, so you can see our animals that we post on Pet Finder, because we do post them in both places. So this sweet girl's waiting for a home. If you know anybody that's interested, please come on down and visit us. We have open adoptions every Wednesdays from 3 to 6 and every Saturday from 10 to 1. We are located at 642 Christian Lane, which is in Berlin. We are behind the recycling facility, right next door to Berlin Animal Control. Thank you for watching. Take care.